Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Irish Writers' Centre Climate Writing Session 7. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, and I am the Events and Marketing Assistant here at the Irish Writers' Centre. This is a free series of webinars that's made possible by Dublin UNESCO City of Literature, and we are delighted to have as our guest host, Kerri Dochartaigh. For each session, Kerri is joined by two different guests with the goal of exploring climate action and finding solutions through fiction, poetry, and creative non-fiction. To keep up to date with all events at the Irish Writers' Centre, do sign up to our newsletter via our website. Tonight, as I said, you can be part of the session by submitting your questions to Kerri and her guests in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, and you can also participate in the chat, and the icons for the both of those are there at the centre of the bottom of your Zoom screen panel. Kerri Dochartaigh is a mother, writer, and a grower who explores ideas of emergency, interconnectedness, and ecologies of care. Her first book, Thin Places, was published by Canongate in spring 2021, for which she was awarded the Butler Literary Award in 2022, highly commended for the Wainwright Prize for Nature Writing, and shortlisted for the Irish Francophonie Ambassadors Literary Award in 2024. Cacophony of Bone was published by Canongate in May 2023, and that was also longlisted for the Wainwright Prize for Nature Writing. She mentors and teaches worldwide, lives in the west of Ireland with her family, and now it gives me great pleasure to hand you over to Kerri, who will introduce her guests for this evening. Thank you so much, Kerri.
Oh, Damien, thanks a million. It's always so gorgeous to have you introduce us and support us through the calls. Thank you very much to you and to everybody at the Irish Writers' Centre. It's my absolute honour to have two people with me this evening, both very different, but both incredibly inspiring for me, and I trust that they will deeply inspire you this evening based on our conversations as well. To the bottom below me, I have Seán Ronayne. And when I asked Seán earlier in the green room if I was pronouncing his name right, he totally made my day by saying, just think of Wayne, just think of the word Wayne, you know, Seán Ronayne. And Seán is an absolutely incredibly talented person, an all-rounder. He is a Cork-born ornithologist and naturalist who has spent a life immersed in nature. In 2020, he embarked on his project to sound record all of Ireland's regularly occurring birds. He has now just 3 species left to record out of almost 200, and has amassed a collection of over 12,000 recordings of Irish birds and other wildlife. In spring 2024, Birdsong, a documentary about Seán's recording project, was released to great acclaim. Seán's first book, Nature Boy, came out this month. I would also love to welcome, just beside Seán, Robin Middleton Baker, who is here to speak with us on behalf of Parents for Future UK. Parents for Future is the biggest parent climate movement in the UK and is growing fast. Parents for Future UK has a network of over 30,000 supporters. They act through building a resilient community, peaceful actions, and creative communications. All their campaigning is rooted in the latest climate science. And so first of all, it's my honour to be able to speak with Seán. And then I'm going to move, after I've spoken with Seán, I'm going to move up to Robin. Now, as usual, as you all know, if you've been with us on these calls before, these are very informal calls, and it really is of the most worth whenever you, the audience, get involved. I just love your questions. I love being able to enter into that dialogue with all of us together, because it's a space for all of us. So as soon as you have a question for either Seán or Robin, please just pop it into the Q&A and I can get on to it as soon as we move into the question section. I've got enough questions for the whole evening for them, so you don't need to worry, but it would be really great to have you involved. So firstly, Seán, I want to welcome you, but I also really want to congratulate you, because I would love for you to share with our audience where you have just returned from and what this is your first event after, Seán.
Yeah, It's been a bit of a crazy few days, to be honest with you. So the book launched not so long ago in Cork. It was about 2 weeks ago now, I think. And we had gone up on Friday evening for lots of different media events to promote the book in Dublin. And well, my partner Alba is pregnant, but her due date was the 25th of October. And as it was our first baby, everyone says that they're always late. But anyway, so we did Brendan O'Connor on Saturday morning, and we had Sunday off. So we just relaxed and did our thing. And I set my alarm for 6 a.m. to get the taxi out to Ireland AM on Monday morning. But Alba woke me before that, saying, "Seán, I'm going into labour." I said, "What?" And so I had to jump out of the bed, and luckily we had our bags ready to go. Got a taxi to the National Maternity Hospital, called ahead, and a few hours later we had baby Laya. So we've been in the National Maternity Hospital, ran out of clothes and all sorts. It's just been chaotic. So we're literally just home now, just an hour ago.
This season has been really big for you. You launched your amazing kind of documentary, and then this book, which all of you should check out, with Hashedi, Nature Boy, and look, we've got a little link at the bottom, and then your first little wee one, who I'm sure, from having read your book and from having been in conversation with you before, from listening to you, I'm sure you are going to really immerse them in nature too. And I wonder, could we begin there? I would really love to know, for those people who haven't read Nature Boy, Seán's book, it is genuinely one of the most heartfelt, open, moving and inspiring nature biographies I've ever had the honour of reading. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about, how did this come to be? How did this book come to be? How did you move from being this nature child to now being kind of, I would say you're going to be an award-winning author, but to being such a creator of programs and books?
You know what? If anybody had told me a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever that I would be in this position now, I would never have believed them. I guess the person that I describe in the book is real, but I never had the confidence or the belief in myself to think that I would be in this position. I've lived a life of immersed in nature. Nature is my life. There's nothing more important to me than nature. Well, apart from my family, of course. But it's like everything about my life has been related to nature, or has stemmed from it. And like when I met my partner Alba here in Cork, and she told me straight away, she's like, "Seán, I don't like the weather in Ireland, and if you want to be with me, you're going to have to move to Barcelona." And I said, "I'm totally up for that." And so we did that. And when I was over there, I started sound recording. Like, I was listening to birds since I was in the pram, since I was a little baby, and my dad would imitate the sounds of the birds and ask me the sounds he was imitating. But actually capturing their sounds happened in Barcelona because I felt exposed over there, because there were all these new voices that I wasn't familiar with. And recording them gave me a chance to listen back at home and say, okay, what was that mystery bird? And actually look it up online. And that's how that started. And that's what led to this position now. And so I had the wilderness of the Pyrenees to get lost in over there, and there were so many great, amazing forests and incredible deltas. And I have to be honest, when I came back to Ireland, I felt a little bit shook, because I didn't have access to those meaningful wild spaces anymore. And that's a hard reality in Ireland, that I think that I have to, now that I have a platform, I have to be open about that. I can't pretend that everything is rosy here, because it really isn't.
Absolutely.
We have the lowest cover of native woodland in all of Europe at approximately 1%. 63% of our birds are at risk of extinction. We have a hefty CV of grim statistics, but you know, I feel like there's still a lot of beauty out there. There's still a lot of beauty out there
Absolutely.
that's worth celebrating. It's worth cherishing. And this is why I started to do what I do now, because I am terrified of people and I am terrified of
Mm,
speaking in front of people. But actually, so when I came back, I said, I'm going to sound record all of these birds. And as I shared the sounds of these birds, I realized that there was a great reaction, that people had a love for these birds too. It wasn't
yeah.
just my nerdy niche interest. And Alba said to me, like, I got an offer of a talk, and Alba said to me, you know, Seán, why didn't you go and do it?
Mm,
And I said, Alba, I couldn't do that. Why would they want to listen to me?
mm,
And she said, Seán, when you talk to me about birds, you explain it in a way that makes it really interesting to me, a person who
mm.
doesn't really like birds. Uh, and she said, you're a different person when you talk about them. She said, I know that people will connect with it. And so she pushed me to do that. And the rest was history, I suppose. You know, it
Yeah.
just went
And
event after event, and it just kind of built up and different
mm,
things. Yeah.
gorgeous. And for anyone who hasn't read the book yet, I thoroughly recommend that you do. But one of the most touching parts of the book, Seán, is the manner in which you talk about the people you love. That can always be a very tricky thing to get the balance right in. You know, the kind of the personal memoir that also looks at nature, but I think you've got it spot on. And I kind of fell in love a little bit with Alba myself. You know, the
Hey,
way
Al
that you talked about her, and
Alba, Alba is my rock. Yeah.
yeah, and just her, she seemed to be a very important part in a lot of your getting to where you are now. And I wonder if you could kind of talk a little bit. There's a section in the book where you talk about Alba kind of saying to you, you know, you just talk to me about all this stuff. You don't really talk about you or your emotions or what you've gone through. And then
Yeah.
there's a shift in the book where you begin to kind of, I suppose, come into a different stage of life. How important was that stage of life in regard to you being able now to sit with us and talk about this?
Yeah. So, like, it's hard to put into words. Alba saved me from myself, or in another sense, she helped me become the person who I wanted to be. And I didn't know how to be that person. So when I first met Alba, I was really inwards and I was very, very shy. And the only way I knew to express myself was to talk about my obsessions, which are birds and nature. And
Yeah.
when I was younger, before I met people that were as understanding as Alba, I used to scare them away because of that. Because they would think like, God, who's this guy that won't stop talking to me about birds all the time? But Alba understood and she listened to me. And on our first date, I gave her a photograph of mine, that something that was very important to me. It was a photograph of a butterfly, which I really loved. And she loved it and she started asking me questions about it, and she would engage me in all of my kind of never ending monologues about birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, she allowed me to be the person that I wanted to be. And she
Absolutely.
supported me in everything. And like she also, it was because of Alba that I had the Asperger's,
Yeah.
the autism diagnosis, and
Yeah.
she taught me so much about people and how to communicate better with people and how not to get so anxious in big social gatherings.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like
And
Alba was really pivotal
yeah.
in everything, and I always want people to know that, you know,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just the face of this book and this film, whereas without Alba,
Yeah.
that there'd be none of this.
Totally. And I think actually what's very refreshing for me in a lot of the times when where you and I have talked together is that you are incredibly open about the two-ness of being an advocate for the natural world. So you will very openly talk about the fact that there is an awful lot of destruction, there is an awful lot of us to despair of, but there is so much hope and beauty too. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to how I know Alba supports you in that. And actually, that's an important thing for us to actually talk about how the people in our backgrounds support us in our advocacy. But how are you finding ways to hold on to that kind of darkness and light together? because you're on the front lines with the work you do.
Yeah. So somebody read out a quote at a talk recently. It was for the launch of Owen Dalton's book. God, forgive me now, I forget her name, but she's a professor of climate and sustainability from UCC. She's a brilliant speaker. And she said, ecologists and people who are really, in tune with the intricacies of nature in Ireland, they live alone in a world of wounds. And it really resonated with me because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you see it everywhere. Some people might look at a large conifer plantation and think that it's a beautiful wilderness, whereas people who know how lacking in nature it is, and how
Absolutely.
damaging it is, it's hurtful to see that,
Yeah.
blighted over the landscape. And I used to complain to Alba about that non-stop in the car,
Yeah.
to the point where she used to say, Seán, will you please stop
Yeah.
it? And she said,
Yeah.
what's the point in ruining my day every day
Yeah.
when I can't do anything about it? Why don't you speak to other people about it and make a difference?
Yeah.
And so that's what I started to do. But I knew that, to really make a difference and to make changes, if you're stuck in the mud and you're just sad and full of despair, how can you move forward?
Completely.
So that's the balance that I try to strike. And
Yeah.
there is so much beauty out there,
There
and I
is.
really mean that. And you don't need to look far for it. And the more time you spend out there, the more it slaps you in the face,
Yeah. Totally.
and that's what I want people to see.
Mm.
And once you see that, and once you hear that, and once you feel it, you don't need to be powered by the sadness and the destruction. You're powered by
Yeah.
the love and the awe and the beauty of
Yeah.
everything, and that powers you more than anything to want to
Yeah.
save it and expand it.
Completely. Yeah.
Um,
And I wonder if now would be a good time for you to read us a little section from your really gorgeous book, Seán. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear.
Kerri, thanks so much. It feels so strange hearing someone as great as you saying these things about my book, because I have such a feeling of imposter
You
in writing and
shouldn't.
reading.
It's really brilliant. Everyone will absolutely love it on this call, so I hope you all read it. But yeah, let's hear you read from it.
So this side of me is very new, reading books to people. So I hope you enjoy it. Let me just make sure that I haven't picked out something too long for you. Oh no, it's not. Okay. So before I read this, I'm just going to give you some context. Again, thanks to Alva, we met in a bar in the Old Oak. A bar called the Old Oak in Cork City, and I was kind of. I tend to get stuck in ruts in situations where I feel comfortable, and I had comfort there because I had a 9 to 5 job. Well, it wasn't 9 to 5 actually; it was more like 9 to 4 a.m. But I had security there, and I was afraid to move out of my comfort zone. I get stuck in routines, and I was there, and I wasn't happy there. And Alba told me, like, Seán, you need to do what you love. There's nothing wrong with working in a bar, but you love nature, and you need to follow your heart. And she said, today you're going to quit that job, and I've got your back until you find your first job in ornithology. And so I did. Thanks to Alba, I quit, and it was about 2 weeks later I got the job. I never thought I'd get it, but I didn't have a driving license, and I was to do bird surveys, like really out there in the Midlands, and I was set up in a house in Longford, and I had to walk really far. So we're in Longford now, and it's my first job. Okay. One morning early on in the job, having just left the last lights of the village behind me, I stepped to the side of the road and turned on my flashlight. So it's about 12:45 a.m. and I'm walking to the bogs to arrive for sunrise. And this is what I had to do. I had to get up at these ungodly hours. A car was approaching with the headlights on. It saw my light, dimmed theirs, and slowed down to a crawl. I was out in the middle of nowhere and it was 2 a.m. I felt a bit nervous. Why were they slowing down so much? I could see they were going to stop. What did they want? Was I in for some trouble here, alone and far from help? As it neared, I could make out the white car body with highlighter yellow and royal blue stripes. It was a Garda car. Ah, okay. They obviously think I'm up to no good. The guard rolled down his window and looked me up and down. What brings you out here in the early hours with a high vis? A fair question, I thought. I'm going to work, Garda. He peered over his glasses at me with a confounded look, as if I'd just spoken in gibberish. Where exactly do you work? I blurted out a cough of laughter. I totally understood his bewilderment. Let me explain, I assured him. My name is Seán Ronayne and I'm an ornithologist. I'm new to the area, but I'm going to be conducting surveys on the bog, commencing an hour before dawn throughout the summer. His suspicion shifted and he smiled in realization. Ah, you're a bird man. Do you want to lift out? My answer surprised him. No thanks, Garda. If you drive me out, I'll only have to sit in the bog in darkness for a few hours. I'd rather walk and take in the fresh air. Understood, he said. Well, welcome to the village anyway, Seán. I'll keep an eye out for you on the roads in the mornings. If you ever need me, you know where I am. I often did bump into him on the roads and we'd stop for a 2 a.m. chat. It turned out one of his kids was living and working in Barcelona, so we had that in common. He was a fan of the bird life in the area, and he'd listen intently as I updated him with my latest findings. Surveys on the bog were incredible. It was an old industrial turf extraction site that was slowly winding down. Many parts were already years into a natural and unabated rewilding process, and these places were simply magical to spend time in. But to understand the beauty of the bog, you need to know what industrially extracted areas look like. These are bare, brown, straight-lined and dry, resembling a totally unnatural, almost post-apocalyptic landscape. The peat was extracted and deposited as dry, loose matter in side-by-side linear strips as far as the eye could see. Every 20 meters or so, long, deep channels ran parallel to the product lines and continually drained off the bog, bleeding it dry of life. Pumps ran in the peripheries to aid this process, and train tracks ran all around the site to extract carriages full of peat. They were mahogany-brown deserts. Amongst the open peat areas, gargantuan diesel-burning vehicles with tyres the size of small cars bellowed unforgivingly through the land. A land that once held so much diverse life was now an insipid, desiccated and unrecognisable version of its former wet and verdant glory. When I was a kid, peat briquettes were sometimes burned on the fire, and we regularly used peat-based potting compost. Now, standing at the source of these seemingly benign products and seeing the impact their extractions have had on the landscape, I was truly shocked. It was capitalism epitomised. Not a thought was given to nature. It was mercilessly stripped down to a naked and embarrassed shell, all in the name of money, greed, and a lack of empathy for our neighbours and nature. In contrast, the areas that had been left to recover were bursting with life. In the parts where the peat had not been extracted down to the rocky, glacial till, bog woodland began to reappear, dominated by a mosaic of pink-tipped heather, the soft greens of scattered bilberry bushes, as well as a rich and varied tree layer, mostly consisting of various willow species and rusty-trunked downy birches. Mornings spent on the bog revealed a mellifluent roar of rich birdsong. Blackbirds, song thrushes, robins, wrens, and so many more sang in unison, each species occupying a different frequency band so as not to disrupt one another, forming an avian concert orchestra. They all had their part to play and each one complemented the other. Some mornings, if I was lucky, I'd spot a bushy-tailed pine marten running into cover, looking like a slightly odd, rich brown, creamy-coloured cat. Orchids were everywhere, and although I was there to record birds, I couldn't resist brushing up on my orchid ID skills. I found so many. Early purple orchid, common spotted orchid, heat-spotted orchid, marsh helleborine, common twayblade, bee orchid, and many more. Some areas that had been taken down to the glacial till there had flooded and formed wetlands. These pools teemed with another neighbourhood of life. Here white and fluffy cotton grass, a variety of green rushes and sedges, and an explosion of vivid purple loosestrife bordered the water, which quivered with a smorgasbord of life. The air hummed with winged insects, and rare breeding waders called it home. Snipe, lapwing, and even curlew were scattered throughout these spots on site. All of these species are ground nesters that need safe, dry, well-vegetated areas to nest in, with access to wetlands where they feed on the aquatic life within. The bog had all of these characteristics in spades, especially where it had been left to regenerate. The site had a mixture of pools with vegetated margins, areas of wet, healthy, raised bog full of heather, bog asphodel and bog cotton, areas of unimproved grassland and dry heath. This mosaic of habitats was a magnet to these birds and provided ample servings of both nesting and feeding opportunities. I asked myself the question, why would anyone want to spoil this with wind turbines?
So moving, Sean. I love that section, and boglands are really dear to my heart, and that area that you're describing is really dear to my heart. It's actually I'm in Westmeath at the moment. I just think you do so much in your words. You're not telling people off. You're not going down that kind of route. And I think it just works. The beauty just works. So thank you so much for sharing it. I have two questions in my Q&A that I would love to bring to you from our audience. The first one is from Luz Layden. Luz says, it's beautiful to hear Seán refer to unfamiliar bird song as hearing the birds' voices. Can he expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I did think about that, and I thought, am I being inaccurate here? Because I actually come from a scientific background. And I'm used to writing scientific papers, and obviously if I had written voices there, I would have been slapped on the wrist. But I feel like voices are more appropriate in this because this book is very emotional to me. I care very deeply about all of these birds. And I guess in a sense I might be anthropomorphizing, and I see them as my neighbors and my friends and my family. And so this is why I refer to them as voices, because they mean a lot to
They
me.
are, because they are.
Yeah, and I can think of so many birds. Like I think for every major life event that I have, there's a bird memory. There's a bird memory associated with it, and yeah, these are
it's kinship for you.
It's exactly what it is, and that's why I allowed myself to break free from my scientific thinking.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so glad that this book is reaching so many varied readers, so okay, thank you for that. Now another question we have is from Mary Senchina. I'm a writer from the Irish diaspora writing about that experience. I grew up in an industrial city in the US, but I'm writing about my great-grandparents who left farms near Killatimah, Mayo, at 16 in 1887 and immigrated to Chicago. Now spending time in Mayo, I'm blown away by the reality of this, going from the extraordinary beauty of Mayo. A woman in Mayo said to me, "You can't eat beauty." And I get that they left because they didn't have enough food, but I want to write about the land in Mayo that feels real. But of course, it's not my land. And I've no idea what it would be like to have their experience, but I want to understand their experience. So I guess I'm asking, do you have any suggestions about how to connect with the land in Mayo authentically and articulate it? Of course, it's not the land they left anymore. I feel so much the grief there when I'm there, and I also feel still the extraordinary beauty still there. So I guess it's really a question of how do we connect with a place that is in our DNA in a way, but like we're not fully connected with physically. Would you have anything to say to that? From time you spent in places that you're connected with, but maybe not in as
Yeah,
many
I mean,
concrete ways.
for me, I can only answer this as best as I can. I'll give it a go. So, for me, when I was writing about places that maybe only live in, a far distant memory of mine, I would go back there and I would spend time there and just sit there and kind of immerse myself in it and soak it up and and kind of let things come to me, even if I wasn't writing anything. In fact, I often didn't write when I was out and about. I would just revisit it and kind of look and take it in. I
Kind of
guess,
just witness the place.
yeah, and like
Witness it.
for me, because I'm a sound recordist, I guess I might approach things differently. I would sound record places that meant a lot to me.
Absolutely.
And so like the place which kind of popped up in my mind's eye from my from my childhood was Roach's Point, and Roach's Point guards the moat of Cork Harbour. And I can see it. I could see it from my grandparents' house, and I could see it from my parents' house, and it's where I was brought, like as a young boy, to escape and to kind of de-stress. And I have memories from different periods of my life there, but the older memories, I guess I needed to kind of rekindle them and get into the zone. So what I did is I sound recorded it. I went out there and I sound recorded Roach's Point, maybe 48 hours, maybe more even. And I would listen to that. And when I was writing, and I would kind of bring those memories back.
Perfect. I'm gonna quickly pop through. We've got 2 more questions, 1 more point. If we just really quickly do it, then no one will feel let down. Claire says, it was so lovely hearing Seán read. I was wondering if you could discuss how you navigate the line between representing nature and speaking for nature. I can't wait to read more of your work.
Representing nature and speaking for nature.
Are they the same, or are they different?
Like, you have to understand that I do not come from a technical writing background.
No.
I come from a place of full-on nature obsession and immersion.
Yeah.
And I guess that I always found that, well, no, I only recently found that I express myself much better through writing than spoken word.
Yeah.
When I want to explain myself, I feel like I'm tripping over myself.
Yeah.
But when I put a pen to paper, another person comes out, and I didn't know that person existed.
Absolutely.
And again, this goes back to Alba. So when me and Alba first started dating, we nearly didn't make it because Alba said that, Seán, all you talk about are birds and otters. Because at the time I had an obsession with otter poo. I used to collect otter poo and analyze it for bones to figure out what they were eating. These are deep obsessions. And she said, I need you to know how you feel about me, because I don't need to date a roommate. And so she was quite upset, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to write down how I feel, because I couldn't express myself verbally. Maybe this will work. And then what I looked down at on the paper, I didn't recognize this person or this voice. And so this is the voice that you hear when I write, and I don't know where this voice comes from or how it's formed, or it's not. I'm not actively thinking about the process. I'm just spilling my heart out on the page.
I hear you. We're really grateful to read your words, and everyone should read them. And I just want to say, we probably don't have time for the other 2. I always like to finish with asking the person who's on, what brings them hope? What is bringing you hope at the moment? Just a quick little answer, and then we can let you go back to your new baba.
There are lots of things that bring me hope. The fact that there are, people like you, and there are people like Owen Dalton, and there are people like, Birdwatch Ireland out there doing great work and achieving great things, and getting to those special nuggets and last wild spaces, that knowing that they're still out there and that there are people fighting for them. This gives me hope. My daughter gives me hope. And actually, this brings me on to something very much related. I released an album of soundtracks. I released it on the night she was born. I didn't get to sleep because I didn't finish it. My plan was to release it the moment she came out, just hit publish, and because she came early, it didn't happen. So I ended up in the hotel until 2 a.m. finishing it. The album is called Hope, and this album is recorded half in Catalonia and half in Ireland, in those wonderful, hopeful, wild spaces that we still have and that we can expand upon and that we need to cherish. And it's a nod to her dual heritage, Catalan and Irish. Gorgeous. And the first track is a composition, and it starts with her actual heartbeat that I recorded on a scan. And then there's tolling church bells from a sleepy Catalan village in the Pyrenees. And then there's an explosion of bird sound. See, this is how I express myself. I can express myself better through medium like this, through sound and through written. But I do have hope, because those places are still there, and I know that most people are good people who want to do the right thing. And I think it's just a matter of getting these people together and spreading this hope amongst people and fighting for change.
Thank you so much for all the hope that you bring me, and I know you'll bring so many others. Thank you, Seán. You can stay or you can go and be with your family. I'm
I'll
going to
just
move
check
down
on,
to
on
Robin.
Alba and the baby, because
Yeah,
Alba's alone with her, and
not
I'll
a
be, I
bother.
promise I'll be straight
Yeah,
back.
not a bother, but just pop yourself on silent and feel free to go and do whatever, and
Yeah,
I'll jump down. And thank you for
I'll be
sharing,
right back.
Damien. Thank you
Thank,
for sharing that little link as well.
yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Seán.
Thanks, Kerri. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Perfect. Now, Robin, I am going to move down to you. Thank you so much for your patience. We kind of ran over a little, which is very unusual for me, but I think the audience will really have enjoyed that last little bit from Seán. Robin, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. And I kind of quickly introduced Parents for Future in general, but I would love to introduce you as a human being to our audience as well, because Robin, I've long admired your activism. We know each other through social media. And in about the last year, I've gained an awful lot from watching how you use your platform. And I wonder if you could first of all tell us why you're a member of Parents for Future UK and maybe how long you've been a member. And then we can move into a more general conversation. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honour. And thank you to Seán. That was amazing to hear his words and his explanation of things. I'm very moved by him and his work. Yeah, so I'll just talk a bit about Parents for Future UK. So it's a community of parents and caregivers who come together to engage in campaigning to do with the nature and climate crisis. What we're doing is trying to take action for a fairer and safer world for children, those who are here now and those to come. We look at pushing for social tipping points. So I don't know if everyone's familiar with that 25% social tipping point. So if 25% of a population actually get on board and voice that they want something to happen, that tipping point is reached, and sort of the powers that be will listen, have to listen, and that rapid change actually starts to happen that we need to see with the nature and climate crisis at the moment. So Parents for Future, it's about engaging and empowering parents to normalise taking action for themselves and for their children and for nature and all of life. It's about making those safer and fairer systems and resourcing parents as well to take action that feels achievable and meaningful. We also stand in solidarity with families, particularly in the global south, who are already experiencing catastrophic effects of climate crisis and the breakdown of the climate. So we are all in this together is kind of how we feel in Parents for Future UK, and we do imperfect action. I think one of the things I really love about Parents for Future is they're not trying to put you into a mold of an activist, or you know, I think a lot of people feel that an activist is a very specific kind of person. And from the very outset, Parents for Future, it's about everybody coming together. So I joined Parents for Future specifically when I was pregnant with my second son, Dylan, who is now just over 1. So I went on the welcome call with them, which is about half an hour welcome call, to talk about what Parents for Future is and how you can get involved and things like that. And I was halfway through my pregnancy with Dylan when I joined. Yeah.
And do you feel like you had kind of been pushing towards that maybe even since before your second had what pushed you towards it at that stage? What was the impetus that took you from maybe thinking about taking that kind of action collectively to then taking that step? How did that look?
So I have been involved with climate groups before Parents for Future, and I think the impetus was the continuing breakdown of the climate and actually worsening stories and the global impact, and then there's a lot of social justice things that are tied in with the climate crisis as well. And I think we need to think about the interconnectedness of all these polycrisis, really. And I think with Parents of the Future, like I was saying, it being a bit different, it's a very enabling group. With other groups, it felt a little bit like they wanted you to be quite to be arrestable. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
yeah, and
that you would go to an extreme.
That's exactly it. That maybe, and I really respect people who feel that that is the right path for them. But I had my first son, Rufus, he's only 4 now, so he was very little then as well. And that wasn't available to me as a caregiver and as a parent. So it was looking for a group in a community where we can take action together as a collective in a way that is peaceful and non-violent direct action.
Absolutely. And so what does that non-violent direct action actually look like? Like talk us through how that looks, and maybe also talk us through how that sits alongside the busyness of raising 2 little ones and working as well. How does that look? What does that action look like?
Sure. So it can take many forms, actually. And you mentioned social media. So social media is a big part of Parents of the Future and how information is shared. One of the things that's quite powerful with Parents of the Future, in my opinion, is how they collate the information about the climate crisis in a way that is, across those 10 slides potentially, with different graphics, just so that people feel informed and actually know what is happening. This is happening now. And the impact in different parts of the world and how communities are dealing with that right now. And then there are things like one of the big campaigns that Parents of the Future do is called Courageous Conversations, where they support parents to be able to start conversations with people who may not be in climate groups. So the common image that we will talk about is being in the playground when you're picking up your children and you've got that 10 minutes or so before they come out, having a chat with someone. One of the things, especially being an English person, is we always talk about the weather. So every conversation you nearly have with parents you might not know very much is a comment on the weather. And the weather here has been really warm, really, really warm, unseasonably warm because of climate breakdown. And we've also had incredibly wet weather as well with flooding. So if someone, were to say, oh, it's very warm, isn't it? I quite like it. Then you might think of a way to gently say, I hear you and I understand that it's nicer that it's warmer, but this is actually the result of the climate issue. And also getting away into talking about it and what do people love, and talking about that rather than being like the doom speaker in the playground. So Courageous Conversations is one, how to have those conversations, attendance at marches. So we went to the Restore Nature Now march, which Chris Packham was hugely involved in organising in London. So we all went to that collectively as a group. And then we've got our local groups as well. So you've got the national group, but we do have local groups that do different things. So, for example, there's been the Mothers Rebellion circles that have happened annually, and here in Southampton and Winchester, we're together as a group. We held a peaceful sitting protest with the names of our children on placards, and that was why we were there, and the things that we were concerned about in the climate breakdown and in how it's affecting other families, and that we are in solidarity with families. At the time, for example, our last circle, the circle before, was to do with the terrible floods in Kenya. So we sat and we were with the people in Kenya who had experienced those floods.
And I would love to know how differently you feel now about the polycrisis in this year and a bit since you joined. Does it feel different for you to navigate?
I think that there's different stages to becoming aware of the climate crisis and the polycrisis, and I think that inevitably it starts with fear, deep fear, and feeling paralyzed by that fear. But once you're in community, you're able to voice that paralysis and be held in a space of care. And then from there, you can think about how you may go forward with that, or how you may act from a place of optimism, stubborn optimism and active hope. And I think that I recognize the need to feel those feelings, but cultivating a daily practice to support myself as well as be supported by other people, to know that we are acting at a very crucial point in our history as people of whole humanity, and thinking about how are we going to go forward to being a good ancestor, and what is the legacy that we're going to leave. So I think it's changed, and it's gone from fear to holding on to this vision of the future that our children deserve. And that's what's driving me now.
Absolutely. That really reminds me of Katie Houghton's introduction to her book, The Language of Trees. She says, the stories that we tell ourselves are who we become, and what kind of memories do we want to leave for, you know, our future ancestors. And so I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit to, what do you think that looks like? How would you like to what kind of world would you like to pass on to your children? And maybe also, how do you think we'll get there?
I think that the world that we want is already here, and I think that we can hold on to it, find it, maybe excavate it from the capitalist sort of topsoil, or concrete. If we're going to describe capitalist as anything, I think that that's what we need to get through, is the current system. I think underneath that system, I think if you talk to people, and that's where the courageous conversations come in, if you actually talk to people, like I said, what do you love? They love their children, and they love nature. Everybody loves nature. They do. They just do. And it's just reminding people, it's supporting people to remember what they really love and focusing on that, because I think capitalism is and that this current structure of society is very deliberately very scary, and wants you to look at what's really scary and make you feel like disempowered in your actions to that. And we can sort it out, like a government or, you know, the leader. But I think actually it's about empowering people with the seeds that are already with them in them, and how they water those seeds of kindness and compassion and love. And whereas maybe we sometimes can, and I do this all the time, water the seeds of fear and worry. So it's just thinking about it perhaps like that. I think we will get there by being incredibly kind to one another. I think we will get there by even people we don't agree with, values or politically or those kind of things. Like, we will get there by listening to each other and hearing, by kindness, by compassion, by understanding, also being realistic about where we're at, and not to put it in a scaremongering way, but just to be, this is what's going to happen. So what shall we do now, from a place of loving kindness, from a place of compassion?
Absolutely. That's so beautiful and so inspiring. I would love to invite audience members now, if you have any questions in regard to Parents for Future UK. You know, I know we have UK attendees, or, you know, even just any questions in and around it, just pop them in the chat for Robin. But Robin, I would love now to kind of speak a little bit to something that you yourself as a person have been doing. Maybe it's linked to being involved with Parents for Future UK, but you've been doing this really gorgeous little series on your Instagram, which is kind of like a frugal series about frugality. And I've been really touched by it, and I've been really kind of held by it. And I wonder if you could share with us what that is, and maybe why you decided to do this, and where people can find it as well.
Yeah, that's really sweet and kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, I started like a little series called Frugal Folk, from a place of having spoken to some people and sort of put it out there about how we actually live in these times in a way that doesn't buy into overconsumption. So it's kind of divesting from that culture of overconsumption, and what trying not to make it too about individual action, because I think we do need that individual action, but we do need to look at things more collectively. But just thinking about those ways that we can divest from a culture that is damaging to the earth. So yeah, it came about from just chatting to people and saying, like, how do we actually do these things? How do we actually divest? Because I think we can hear a lot about we need to divest and we need to stop overconsumption. But for me personally, I was like, but how do we do that? So with Frugal Folk, the first sort of little video is just around some clothes that white clothes that my children and I have that I just can't get the stains out. So I was thinking about, like, how can I deal with this and not throw these lovely clothes away, because it's all lovely cotton and like really breathable and things. So I dyed them with turmeric, and it's the videos just taking people through step by step how I did that with not having to spend any money. Like, I think sometimes with hacks and things, and they're really great, and this is just where I am financially, is I don't have a lot of spare money. So I'm just like, what can I do with what I already have to renew something, regenerate something? So that was one thing. And the next episode that's coming up is going to be about mending. So I mend a lot of clothes. I've got a big mending basket, and I'm going to do a little bit on darning, and then a little bit on how I patch, use embroidery to patch my clothes as well. So that's the next episode.
And I mean, we think that we somehow think when we're doing these things that they're not important, or they're not relevant, or they're small. But actually, these are really big things, aren't they? You know, the idea of sharing, skill sharing. It's a really ancient thing. It's something that Indigenous cultures are very much more au fait with than we are. But we, like, our ways would have been really similar to this, really not that long ago. And so it is revolutionary, and it really does matter. And it's, I think when you mentioned that it's people not really knowing what to do or not being able to do something, it's that empowerment. And I wonder if you could maybe speak a little bit to the link between kind of creative empowerment and, you know, what impact does that have, do you think, on your children?
I mean, I think the way that I mother Rufus and Dylan is very much centered in that loving kindness way of being. There's a really good picture book actually that I recommend called Loving Kindness, and it's by Tim Hopgood, and it's lovely, and it's even for very small children. It's just that idea of how to cultivate that. I think with Rufus is 4 now, and I think that you start to hear back some of your parenting at that maybe 3, maybe 4, and the way that he speaks, it makes me very emotional actually, even thinking about it. But the way he speaks about Mother Earth and how we need to look after her, and it's just beautiful. And I think we did the dyeing together as well. We did some dyeing together, so he has taken that on. And yeah, definitely, like you said about empowering, it is empowering him to think about these things and think about where things come from. But I also, like I sort of mentioned before, remembering our connection to all of this, that I often think about that notion of throw away. Where is away? Because it's just in nature, isn't it? And we disconnected ourselves from that. Like, that's one of the ways that we disconnected ourselves, because we're not throwing it away. We're putting it there, but it's in our web, it's in our space, in our more than human family too.
Completely. That's so moving what you said, and I definitely understand what you mean about this idea of our children and how they, you know, the impact that how we raise our children, and I mean all of us collectively, how we all collectively raise children, because I do believe it's all of our responsibility, will have an impact on Earth. Like, this is very real and very solid. I'm at a conference, a community foundation conference at the moment, and was listening to someone talk about the children's citizen conference that happened a couple of years ago, and basically they brought a lot of children together, and Malcolm Noonan, a politician, said, look, if there's going to be an adults one, we need to have a children's one. Children need to have a voice when it comes to the natural world. So they asked lots of questions and they set it all up. And the main response, the main takeaway from the situation that children gave these adults was that we should be treating Mother Earth as a family member, that it should just be a given, and that children just feel this so instinctively. And yeah, I wonder, what do you feel are the challenges as a mother during this crisis? What are the biggest challenges for you to navigate as a mother in this crisis?
It's overwhelm. It's definitely overwhelm, and it's seeing, which a lot of the time comes from how other children are in the world and how they're suffering in the world, and how that then feeds into maybe the energy or the space that I feel I have for my two children, or any, like, I've got nieces and nephews and things as well. So I absolutely hear that, and I think a lot of people, that is the challenge, is the overwhelm and the amount of information, which just feels like too much. And I would say to that finding community and joining like a climate group or something like that has been like so supportive for that, and having a daily practice of meditation and mindfulness to ground me and connect me back to Mother Earth. And like Seán was saying about witnessing nature and even just looking out, that's where the hope lies as well, is looking outside. I was looking outside today. There was a collared dove in my garden, a magpie and a great tit, and they just came into my garden and they did their thing and then they flew off. And I was like, look at this, look at all of this rich beauty that is continuing, that is here now. And that's often what if I do get overwhelmed, it's like, look what is here now, look what we're going to work to preserve, look what we're going to work to save, and look to nature for the lessons that we need on how we move forward.
Yeah, so moving. And I also think it's really important to say, kind of a bit like what I was mentioning to Seán earlier about Alba's impact on supporting his advocacy work and activism, that, you know, we all feed into each other's energy when it comes to this journey. And there was a time period that I found it really difficult a few months ago, and you were putting up this series on, you were taking kind of videos, weren't you, in nature and just putting some words up. It was almost like a meditation, wasn't it? It was kind of you are here kind of thing, and that really supported me in my work. And I think, you know, obviously you felt supported by being part of the Parents for Future UK. I'm not even in the UK, but I'm able to access what you're putting up. And then where do those ripples hopefully just continue? And I find that
absolutely
very impactful. You know, we on these calls, we're kind of really trying to look at ways that we can support each other in this interconnectedness as we all try to navigate this crisis together. So I want to finish by asking you, which I ask absolutely everybody. Quick reminder, if you've got a question, you need to pop it in now, because Robin will be going back to her baba soon. What brings you hope?
People and my husband and my children and nature and those birds that I saw earlier, that they continue the work of being alive in this world, and they allow me to witness them, and I'm filled up by that. And then I want to give a gift back to them of, I will do everything I can in return.
So beautiful, that gift economy idea. So gorgeous. Thank you so very much for being with us, Robin, and Seán as well. We are now going to have our 10-minute break before we come back for, I'll set a little writing task. So everyone, please go and sort of breathe, make yourself a cup of tea, have a wee, do whatever you need, and I'll see you all back at 2010 British and Irish time. Thank you to both of my guests. You're free to go if you want, or you can come back. It's totally up to you. There's no pressure. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Kerri, sorry. just Kerri, just really quickly, if you would like to share with everybody that there is a local group, Parents for Future UK group being set up in Dublin.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, so if you're everyone on the call wanted to know more about that, they can just go on Instagram and direct message
Brilliant.
Parents Futures UK. But also they can set up their own Parents for Futures group wherever they are. And it doesn't. It can be just a little handful of pals, like it doesn't. But just contact Parents
So
for Futures
good.
UK for support.
Thank
I
you
am
so
gonna.
much for
That's
that,
okay.
Robin. Thank you.
No, thank
And
you.
I'll see you all back at 11 minutes past 8. Have a lovely break. Thank you both.